Hey guys, welcome back for some more tutorials. My name is Magnet, and today we're going to be talking about using Blink in PvP. We're going to be talking a lot about the attack timings, we're going to be talking a lot about the transitions and the safety and flexibility associated with it. More specifically, we're just talking about the opener. Blink gets severely less useful as the game goes on, so you need to kind of understand that it really is just for an opener, maybe a potential kill type of move, but it's not one of these that you can just stay on for the entire game and hope to win. Just because Stalkers get so poor in their cost effectiveness in PvP. So let's go ahead and jump into the game here and we'll talk about it as we go along. Now we're looking at Zest versus Deer, and since it's been so long it's hard for me to remember which one of these guys plays Blink, but I think this might be one game where both of them do. And this is a situation you can find yourself in a lot, but we're going to talk about the different reactions and the different things we see from these guys based upon what they're seeing from their opponent. So both of them opening 13 gate like it's very normal in PvP, not much of a reason not to. Both of them going double gas. Actually, I should correct myself. No, never mind. They both do go double gas, which is also very common in PvP, so nothing terribly unusual here. Looks like Zest just opening up with 2 out of 3 on his geysers, and also Deer doing the same. So these are pretty much mirror builds so far. And if I'm thinking correctly, I think this is the game where they both do open Blink. So one really cool thing that Zest is doing is he's opening 2 gate, and that's a really cool opener, especially to go into Blink because it does open with 3 Stalkers as soon as possible. Basically, as soon as the second gateway is finished, you should have both gateways producing Stalkers at the same time, and then maybe a Mothership Core also if you can afford it. And the idea here is to have 3 Stalkers and a Mothership Core that's really flexible. You can do a lot with that. You can expand, you can throw down your Twilight Council, you can go Stargate, you can go Robo, you can do whatever you want. So this is very flexible here out of Zest, even if he's not the player that we're watching the Blink play for. But on the other side, Deer, just grabbing a couple units here, going to be doing a little bit of an early pressure, and it looks like Zest is going for the Twilight Council, so he's going to be the one that commits to that a little bit faster. So Deer right now is just sending out a couple of units, going to try to get a little bit of pressure to put together. And yeah, this is Stargate from Deer, so we were correct in assuming that Zest was the one doing Blink. So with this opener, he has 2 Stalkers creating at a time. He's going to drop a 3rd gateway, and his Twilight Council is just finishing up. Also on these games, note the times of everything that's coming down, so that if you want to mimic these builds, that you're getting in them at a similar time. And really, these timings are just possible because they don't miss probes, they do everything else they're supposed to, they don't get supply blocks, stuff like that. So Zest is going to go ahead and start Blink as soon as he has the money. Should see it come up here in just a second. I think he's out microing on the map right now, actually. So with Blink, you can be a little bit adventurous with your Mothership Core. That's one of the flexible things that this does offer. So you can kind of get in here and scout and see what's going on. Blink also has some of these little softer pressure timings that you can do against really greedy builds. So this is a Stargate build from Deer, but it's not overly greedy considering he's producing a lot of units behind it. Some of these openers will produce basically nothing but like a Mothership Core and just have it sitting there waiting to overcharge if you try to attack up, which is fine. I mean, you can still get in there and scout, and you can do a lot with scouting, especially with Blink, because you can just blink away from the Nexus Cannon. So there's a lot of flexibility associated with the scouting in Blink, and that's something that you can really take advantage of. So Zest is going to get in here, and he really needs to figure out what's going on so he can do his pressure correctly. So his Mothership Core doesn't quite see what it wants to see yet. There's a Stalker denying vision. There's a lot of gateway units here at the front, so Zest can't really do a ton, but even still, he can explore in there and figure out that it's a Stargate. So let's talk about adapting to Stargates a little bit. Obviously, Oracles are a big concern, so the best idea for Stargate is to leave a couple of Stalkers behind, and you can still pressure out on the map with the rest of your units. They're going to have a pretty slow transition, and most of the time they're going to transition into Immortals, but since they spent so much money on the Stargate and whatever comes out of the Stargate, it's going to be pretty slow for them. If they opt for just Phoenix, then that's going to be even better for Blink. And conversely, you can also kind of run a contain at the bottom of their ramp against Stargate, because they won't have anything to break force field for quite a while, and trying to spend a Phoenix to lift a sentry in order to break the contain can be really difficult. So we're not going to see too much more until Zest finishes up his warp gate. And with Blink, you really do need to be willing to get out on the map and pressure, especially against Stargate, considering they just won't have a lot of units that do well against your Blink Stalkers. You can see the Mothership Core did recall now that it figured out what's going on, and he's just leaving 3 Stalkers behind for the time being while his other stuff is out on the map. So it's going to be really about how fast can the transition into Immortals come down for Deer, and how aggressive is Zest going to be with his Blink Stalker. So he has Blink starting to warp out on the map, And the good thing with Blink is that it's very flexible in the sense that you can either be very aggressive and very forward, or you can stay home and be very safe and just expand. And both of those will be viable options, and this is exactly what Zest is doing. So he just goes ahead and expands. Deer is forced into producing a Void Ray, and he has to play this a little slower because he doesn't know if Zest is going to attack him. This is one of the benefits of playing against Stargate builds, is that Blink is very, very threatening to Stargate builds, and if you were really aggressive here with Zest, obviously Deer would probably hold, but at the same time, if he messes up too much, then that's a point where the Blink can really get out of control. So even still, Zest's still going to be a little bit aggressive about trying to be out on the map, trying to prevent any attacks from coming forward. Of course, if they're already in attacks, like if they just go one base Stargate, then you're going to know about that, and you can blink away from it, so you're not under too much threat. And of course, getting a free Phoenix here is nice. So Deer's kind of stuck back in his base, producing units, trying to defend against this Blink, while Zest just goes ahead and expands. And now he's starting to even pressure a little bit even after the expansion, trying to make Deer waste force fields, and this is the contain I'm talking about. You can prevent them from coming down the ramp for quite a while if they are running Stargate against you. So there's a lot of intricacies associated with this, and we'll try to skip forward here. Now that the Immortal is out, there's really not a whole lot you can do if you've expanded. Trying to be aggressive against the Immortal is something you can do if you don't expand. But if they're just going straight for Immortals, honestly, they should hold it. So that's why you need to know what's going on. Zest still preventing attacks all over the map here. He has extra sentries out now with his Stalkers. And the transition into Robo has to happen eventually. This will always happen with Blink, because you do need some form of detection, just in case they go for something like DTs. The scouting is nice with the Observer, if you can get that out on the map. And there's also other opportunities to do little blink-ins to the main, if you want to, with maybe 4 or 5 Stalkers, and just pick off individual probes later in the game. So, right, Blink is really just about map control. It's about the flexibility that it offers. It can really do anything, but it does rely on you being able to kind of feel the game out and understand what you're supposed to do with the Blink. It's not really a composition that you can just kind of run blindly. Here's those few Stalkers coming in now just to try to pick off a couple probes and then just blinking out. He does lose a Stalker for it, but as the game goes on, like I was mentioning, the Stalkers are going to get less and less useful. So once you make about 8, if you're not going to attack with that, don't make any more for, I would say, honestly, the rest of the game, unless you really find a good reason to make them. Other units like Immortals, Zealots with Charge, all that good stuff is really important. And then getting your attack upgrades is important as well, because you're going to be completely switching your composition either into Colossus or into something like Immortal Archon. There's not much else that's really viable in this matchup right now. So that kind of extends through all the Blink openers right now. You can see the game ends here pretty soon, and I think it's when Zest actually attacks, so we can watch that if we want to keep going down through that. Now Zest is doing a little bit of multi-pronging right now. You can see there's 4 Stalkers here in the main and 4 at the natural, and all they're doing right now is just picking off probes. So this kind of extended harassment is really possible if you have something to spot for it, like an Observer, or Zest actually sent out a hallucinated Phoenix. So if you look at the worker kills because of stuff like that, 14 workers down, and really it cost him a lot of Stalkers, but at the same time those Stalkers weren't going to do much in a fight anyway. So Zest still being really annoying with this. Now Deer's starting to attack across the map, and it's really up to Zest to have transitioned properly by the time this comes across. So a decent amount of Immortals, Void Ray, a couple Zealots and whatnot, overcharging this Nexus, getting the right warp ins. As long as his composition is good, then he should be able to hold this, but if he was trying to hold this with only Stalkers, he would die really fast. These 4 Immortals would easily one-shot a Stalker, and 1 Stalker being dead every Immortal cycle is really bad. So it looks like Zest is doing kind of crappy here, but he's actually doing fine. There's not a whole lot that Deer can do to reinforce, because Zest is just picking it all off anyway with the Stalkers. So he's just kind of all over the map. He can safely overcharge here and be just fine. And honestly, once he pushes this off, he has a lot of Immortals. He can chase all this stuff down. If you have Blink and they try to run away, there's not a whole lot they can do. But now Zest has a pretty good lead in this game, and I believe he just attacks across the map and wins from this point. So not much more to talk about here, but Zest kind of showcasing the flexibility of Blink, especially against Stargate. And in each one of these replays, we're going to look at something different that they're facing. So let's take a look at the next one. Again, it's Zest, but this time he's fighting Rain. And these guys hit each other all the time in PvP. These are like the 2 PvP guys that just are much, much better than everyone else, and they seem to run into each other a lot. Whoops, I'm pressing the wrong buttons. So I think it's actually Rain that opens Blink this game, but I'm not absolutely sure. Like I said, I've watched hundreds of replays, and it's hard to remember each one individually. But I think it's Rain. I don't think it's Zest, but we'll have to see. Actually, maybe I'm wrong. Rain strikes me much more as a DT player, so maybe it is Zest once again. So Zest taking double gas, as is Rain. Nothing unusual in these openers so far. It's about as standard as you get. It's going to take their cores right here, and you can see the builds are basically identical, and they should be. There's really not much of a reason to deviate much from this opener from the first few buildings or so. They're really stable and they're really common for a reason. So Zest, once again, check it out, going for this double gateway opener, putting down an extra pylon obviously so he doesn't get supply blocked. And here's the Twilight Council, but I think this is going to be for DTs from Rain, to be totally honest. Also a Twilight Council from Zest. So we're going to see this kind of break down into a different sort of game from the earlier one. And if this is DTs, yeah, it is. Okay. So since it is DTs, with Blink, you need to know about that, and you need to get your Robo up in time in order to prevent any attacks. So this is why, if you're on Blink, you typically open 3 gateways, just because you have that attack potential. And you also need to build in a timing to put your Robo down. This has to come down at the right time if you don't know what's going on. And the right time is at about 6 minutes. So we need to watch Zest and kind of keep an eye on it and make sure he knows what's going on here. And see when he knows and kind of figure this stuff out for us. Of course, like I said, the Mothership Core is a very viable scouting tool in this matchup. And Zest should have seen the Dark Shrine coming down. So that's why you see his Robo on the way right now. So basically, if you want to copy exactly what Zest is doing here, this is so funny. Why is he putting a pylon down next to his? But if you want to copy exactly what Zest is doing, is you just kind of float in there with your Mothership Core and see what's going on. And if you don't know, then you probably just want to drop the Robo anyway. Now, most of these DT builds are designed to just expand right away, and Zest knows this. We've already talked about DT openers. You should have an idea of what this is supposed to do. So he does expand right away in response. But the interesting thing is that if you're Zest, you have Blink, you have all your gateways up, and you're getting an expansion. But if you're Rain, you're in a little bit better position because of the way these openers are kind of unfolding. Especially if you get the Robo on time, which it looks like he's a little bit late on. He favored the faster Nexus. So Rain basically has DTs here, and he's just transitioning into Blink, which is a very viable transition, especially against other Blink players or against other Stargate players. So Blink can be used after a DT opener. It doesn't necessarily have to be straight there, but you do need to make sure you have your bases covered if you're Zest or if you're defending from DTs, as we can see a DT walking across the map right now. So if your Robo isn't quite ready, you definitely need at least 1 sentry to just force field the ramp here and buy time. And I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but you should be able to see the shimmer come up. Just watch your ramp closely, and when you see it, you can just block that DT out. So, and note that the DTs are designed here to defend as well, because getting detection in 2 places this early in the game is really hard, especially for a Blink player. So against DTs, this isn't something you can be aggressive against. You typically would just want to take your own expand, prevent the DTs from doing any damage, and then just play out a normal game from there. So it's not like you can afford to attack very often against DTs, and the builds with Blink that don't get a Robo built in, or that forget it or something, against a DT build will just flat out lose, and that happens a lot. So not a whole lot more to say about this game. You just need to understand how to handle it against various openers. So he's also doing what we saw last game, quicker forge just to get your upgrades going, and you want to switch your composition into either Immortal Archon or into Colossus as quickly as possible without being vulnerable from a lot of timing. So hopefully that'll at least cover the DT segment of this. And note that if Rain does have Blink, if you get into Blink versus Blink, typically the DT player should win because their expansion was faster, they should have more money, stuff like that. So now we're going to be talking about Wellmew versus Baby Knight. And Wellmew is also very much known to be a DT user, but I do not believe he used it in this game. I think this is going to be a Blink versus Blink game just straight off the bat, so we can talk a little bit about the map control that's involved with that. So we'll see how this unfolds, and again, I don't exactly remember which one opens Blink, but I'm pretty sure they both do in this replay, so we'll have to see. So we'll just fast forward up until this point. Again, very normal openers, 13 gate, double gas on roughly 15 or 16. Not too much of a reason to deviate from this. Core is on the way as well, so nothing too crazy. And then quickly after this, we're going to see these builds start to unfold. Wellmu's starting off with a Zealot here. It looks like he decides to cancel it. I'm not sure what the reasoning was behind that. Maybe just running the wrong opener or something. He can't really know much by now. So both players just starting off with the Stalker and the Mothership Core. Both of them, interestingly enough, chrono boosting their Stalker, so, or at least one of them was. And yeah, here we go. Twilight versus Twilight, Blink versus Blink. This is where the game can get a little bit weird, and this is where coming into the point of knowing how the game feels is what's most important. So, you see a lot of weird stuff from this. Both of them opening Blink right away. Both of them getting up to 3 gateways right away, like we've talked about. So 3 gateway Blink, really normal. And Baby Knight getting the Robo right away as well. This is one of the advantages of getting a super fast Robo, is that you won't have as much attacking potential, your attacks won't be as strong. But if you're in Blink versus Blink, whoever gets the faster Robo typically has an advantage, because Immortals are the end-all to these Blink fights. And if you have more Immortals than your opponent because you got a faster Robo, then all of a sudden you're in way better shape. This also is good against a DT player, but you kind of need to figure out what's going on here. So I don't know what Baby Knight knows. I think this is honestly just a blind Robo here. So this can be really bad against Stargate openers, as far as kind of gimping your potential to defend against those. But the logic also is that you're going to get into Robo anyway. So most of the time this won't be a big disadvantage against Stargate openers, but it can cause a little bit of trouble if they're doing a lot more aggressive Stargate openers. Either way, I would say that this is fine. But especially it will get you advantages in certain matchups, like against DTs and against other Blink players. So we can see Wellmu is just going for 4-gate Blink because he sees it's Blink versus Blink, and he just wants to be aggressive and just have more Stalkers. But the choice here from Baby Knight with more Immortals is honestly much better. So he just starts an Observer because he isn't quite sure what's going on yet. And this is always perfectly safe against a DT play. He's just going to move out right now and see what he can get done. Of course, the Observer will give him longer vision up the ramp here in case he somehow loses Mothership Core, which would be really bad. So this is one disadvantage, is that I think Baby Knight is actually handling this incorrectly. If you go for this fast of a blind Robo, you really shouldn't be getting too excited about attacking them, because Wellmu's choice was to get more Stalkers here, and if you have more Stalkers in Blink versus Blink, you typically win. Baby Knight's advantages won't be pushed until he gets a Robo. So I think being more defensive here is a smarter choice here from Baby Knight, considering his Robo is going to come up and have the Immortals out that's necessary to push us away pretty soon. So I think this is kind of a mistake, to be totally honest. This is not something I would advocate too much. And you can see Baby Knight eventually gets worn down and has to run away. So I don't know what more to say about this. He really shouldn't be this far forward. I think he should be more interested in taking an expansion. So I guess we'll have to see the transitions come down here. And eventually we will. It's not like either player dies right now. Since it is Blink versus Blink, you typically don't want to blink away from them until they've already spent theirs, so that's one thing to note. And if you're trying to chase them down, that'll also change a lot. Also, this is another interesting transition in Blink versus Blink, is that if they just decide to skip the Robo and be greedy, you can go for a Dark Shrine, and a lot of times you will catch players totally off guard and win the game that way. So Baby Knight's going really tech heavy here. He's getting the Immortal, he's getting the extra Dark Shrine, or rather the first Dark Shrine, not the extra Dark Shrine, but it's in addition to everything else he's doing. Right now he just needs to survive and wait for his advantage to be so great that there's not much the opponent can do about it. So trying to get enough Immortals out right now, waiting for that Dark Shrine to finish, and this is the type of thing where if they don't realize what's going on, this could just end the game. And you can see Wellmu is just now adding on his Robo because he finally is figuring out what's going on. But the DTs are so early right now. He's warping forward. Obviously the Observer will be in here in time. He's going to have to hold position on his ramp if that's what comes down to it. So this is one of the downsides of trying to get more Stalkers out. And he doesn't hold position on his ramp. I'm a little surprised, but he knows that he's able to trap this. Just blinks right around it. Force field, and possibly, I think he can kill it if the Observer gets there in time. Look at this funny micro trying to keep the DT from getting away, and it just gets away anyway. So yeah, not a whole lot going on there. But both of them getting expansions, and look at the unit count now for Baby Knight. He has 3 Immortals, and Wellmu has 0, because he decided to go for the faster Immortals. So 3 Immortals will almost one-shot a Stalker. Let me check this really quickly so I can have my facts right. Yeah, it's 150 damage. Stalkers have 160 health. So with Immortals and Stalkers, 3 Immortals is a really great number to have. If you ever get an advantage like this, in Blink versus Blink especially, this is the type of thing where you really want to push forward and kind of try to make them make mistakes against the Immortals. Really their only way of surviving is to force field the Immortals away really well, but if they don't, then they just lose. So There's also an Archon here to crush the force field, so pretty cool transition here from Baby Knight. And with the Immortal lead here, and with Whelmy really not being that prepared and being a little bit greedy with the extra Stalkers, all of a sudden Baby Knight's build looks really good, and there's not a whole lot that Whelmy can do to stop this. So just going to continue to be aggressive here, but picking off the extra Immortal, Archon kind of stuck in the back. That's kind of annoying, but even still, against the Nexus Cannon, he's still confident enough just to walk in there and say, nah, I got this. I have a better Immortal count. I can win this battle every day. He just walks away right now, and look how bad Whelmy's composition still is. It's only Stalkers, and he's not going to have Mothership Core energy the next time it comes around. So really, Baby Knight just kind of has to wait until it's time to fight again when the Nexus Cannon wears off, and there won't be much that Whelmy can do to stop this. So this is the advantages of in Blink versus Blink getting the faster transitions put down. So like I said, the diminishing Stalker power from that point on really starts to show itself, especially when these Immortals start to come on the field. There's now 4 Immortals as he's rallied another one forward. And there's just nothing Whelmy can do. These Stalkers are just mincemeat against this many Immortals. And it's really just Baby Knight's prerogative to keep attacking in there and keep getting good trades as much as possible. He's just moving back his Immortals that are hurt, waiting for the shields to regenerate so he can continue to take damage. And look how fast Whelmy's army is dying because of this. So I guess long story short, the moral of the story is that if it's Blink versus Blink, you need to have the faster robo transition, because that's the end-all be-all of where Blink is going, and who can get there faster is really going to win the game. So I hope you guys at least got some good ideas as far as what to do with Blink in PvP. A lot you can learn from these pro players, and they're pretty good at it because they play the game, 12 to 14 hours a day. They don't mess around. So hope you guys liked that video. I'll be back with more very soon. There are more Protoss tutorials down in the description. You can click that link and it'll take you to all my other ones. So check that out, and I'll see you later.